What would you do if the wealthiest, most connected people in your city tried to destroy your family? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in how to handle it. To understand what happened, you need to understand my family. My father, David, is a classic working-class man. He came from a poor family and has worked hard his entire life. My mother, Eleonora, on the other hand, was born into one of the most important and respected families in our city. They were wealthy, with deep connections to everyone who mattered, the mayor, lawmen, powerful business owners, you name it. My mom and dad met decades ago and fell in love instantly. When they got married, my mother's family was openly disdainful. To them, my dad was just some poor pleb, a disgrace to their prestigious name. Their arrogance was breathtaking. When my brother, Marcus, and I were born, they even demanded we be given names from their side of the family, since we would be carrying what they considered my father's unworthy last name. They were, to put it mildly, posh, arrogant pricks. Everything changed when I was 8 and Marcus was 9. Our mom, Eleonora, was diagnosed with cancer. For 3 long years, my dad was by her side constantly, through every treatment, every setback, every moment of pain. Her own family? They were ghosts. My aunt, Isabella, was perpetually busy, always attending some formal reception. My grandmother, Beatrice, claimed she was too old to visit, even though her health was perfectly fine. In 3 years, they barely showed up. Then, at the age of 11, my mom died. We were utterly devastated. Marcus and I were just kids, 13 and 12, and we cried like babies. Our dad was a wreck, completely in shambles. It was in this state of raw grief that the attack began. Just a few hours after my mother passed, the phone rang. It was my Aunt Isabella, demanding my dad meet them immediately. It was a move of breathtaking cruelty. At that moment, consumed by their own arrogance and greed, they were completely unaware that they weren't just attacking a grieving man. They were planting the seeds of their own destruction in the minds of 2 young boys who would never forget. My dad went to meet them, and what they did next was mental. My aunt, flanked by a lawyer, told my grieving father that with his wife dead, he was now incapable of having custody of us. They were going to take us. My dad, furious, refused, but they didn't stop. The next day, before the funeral had even taken place, they were back with more threats and more abuse. This went on for years. They accused my dad of assaulting my aunt, a vicious lie that made many people turn their backs on us. They sent him endless legal papers. Then they went for our inheritance. We discovered that money my mother had set aside for us had vanished. They called my dad and threatened him, give them custody, or we would never see that money. Many people who hear this part of the story ask about the specific law, and the truth is, it wasn't a straightforward law that let them just take our money. It was a loophole. A missing signature on a legal paper my mother hadn't signed before she died, which they exploited mercilessly. Though, eventually, through legal means, we did get the money back. The pressure campaign made my dad's life a living torture. We would find him crying over piles of legal documents, sometimes hitting his head on the table in pure despair. At night, Marcus and I would lie in our beds and hear our father crying from his room, and we could do nothing. As one commenter later noted, people should never assume that kids are oblivious to these situations. We saw everything. The only thing that kept him going was us, and despite his own mental state being in tatters, he was an amazing dad. Fast forward 10 years, life had found a new normal, the abuse finally stopped, and my father found a wonderful girlfriend and was happy. Marcus and I were both in university and doing well. We hadn't spoken to my mother's family in years, promptly ignoring any attempts they made to contact us. Until this summer, my cousin was getting married, and they invited us, specifically, just me and Marcus. We accepted, and immediately, the plan began to take shape. In my country, weddings are massive social events, and given our family's status, this one would be attended by all the most important people in the city. We knew most of them had only ever heard my aunt's and grandmother's twisted version of the story. It was time for everyone to hear the truth. It was exposure time. This was their greatest flaw, a blindness born from years of privilege. They saw 2 young men, but they were still looking at the grieving children from a decade ago, never imagining those boys had grown up, carrying a memory as sharp and as cold as steel. The big day arrived. Marcus and I met outside the church, ready. We patiently sat through the reception, waiting for the after party at a huge mansion outside the city. Once there, we spotted our targets, Aunt Isabella and Grandmother Beatrice, holding court in a circle of people that included the mayor himself. Bingo! We approached with friendly smiles. Have you met my nephews? Aunt Isabella said, beaming for the crowd. We joined the circle and listened. As we predicted, they started talking about our dad, how horrible he was, how he'd exploited our mother, and how lucky we were to have turned out so well. Unlike him, that last line did it. I looked my aunt dead in the eyes, raised my glass, and in a clear voice that cut through the chatter, I said, actually, and then I unleashed hell. I told them the whole story, every last detail. I praised our father for his unwavering love and devotion, and I damned my aunt and grandmother for their cruelty and greed. If I missed a single detail, Marcus was right there to fill it in. When I finished, a complete, deafening silence fell over the group. Aunt Isabella's face was beet red with fury. My grandmother looked like she was about to burst into tears. The mayor and the other guests stared at them, their expressions shifting from shock to disgust and then to cold anger. My little cousin, who knew nothing of this, kept asking, Mom, is that true? We had presented the story with such detail that they couldn't deny a single word. To twist the knife, we raised our glasses one last time. At least we came out fine, I said. Our studies are going excellent, all thanks to our dad. We left them standing there in the ruins of their own making. The fallout was spectacular. We later learned that everyone turned their backs on them. They became the shame of the city, isolated in their big, empty houses. The mayor cut all contact, as did the businessmen. A business they owned shut down after its funding dried up. Then came the final humiliation. On the mayor's orders, the municipal council removed the commemorative plaques from buildings they had donated money to. That, we heard, killed them inside. They tried to reconcile, but we ignored them. The best part of all was telling our dad what we had done. He was the happiest man alive, seeing the rich, arrogant people who had tormented him finally get what they deserved. He is so lucky to have sons like us, who will make sure no one ever messes with him again. Ultimately, our story is a harsh reminder that social status and wealth are fragile things, easily shattered by the truth. Cruelty, especially towards family, has a way of coming back to you in the most public and ruinous way possible. So, I have to ask, have you ever had to wait years for the perfect moment to set the record straight? Let me know in the comments below.